Listening on Audible helps your imagination soar. Whether you listen to stories, motivation, any genre you love, you can be inspired to imagine new worlds, new possibilities, new ways of thinking. Maybe you'll find inspiration in the incredible true story of Black female mathematicians at NASA in Hidden Figures, or the fantasy world of Throne of Glass. There's more to imagine when you listen. As an Audible member, you get to choose one title a month to keep from their entire catalog. New members can try Audible free for 30 days. Visit audible.com/imagine or text imagine to 500 500. That's audible.com/imagine or text imagine to 500 500.
This podcast is brought to you by eHarmony, the dating app to find someone you can be yourself with. Why doesn't eHarmony allow copy and paste in first messages? Because you are unique, and your conversations should reflect that. eHarmony wants you to find someone who will get you. How are you going to know who gets you if people send you the same generic conversation starters they message everyone else? Conversations that actually help you get to know each other. Imagine that. Get who gets you on eHarmony. Sign up today.
Let's chat. It's hard. You want to talk? I know, that's disappointing. Sit back. Let's work this out. How's it going? What are we doing here? Where are you going? Hey there. Wow. It's not always easy. It's amazing if you think about it. Let's think about this. Strange. I have some thoughts about that. Life is hard. Trauma bonded.
Welcome to a special extra episode of Trauma Bonded. This is your host, Elly. No tea today, as we decided a one-on-one interview would be less taxing on the Storyteller. I talked to anonymous mom of This Is Actually Happening, episode 128, What If Your Son Stabbed Your Daughter? It's a short but sweet follow-up on a tragic story, and the Storyteller decides to continue to be anonymous to further protect her children and her family. So here it is, my conversation with Anonymous. So I'm talking with our anonymous storyteller from episode 128. What if your son stabbed your daughter? Thank you for joining me. I know that you reached out because you said you had an update, and I would love to hear whatever you want to share with us.
Yes, well, thank you first of all for even covering our story. I was excited just to see that it was still being shared and, making people aware of situations that happen and just really what I wanted to do was to let people know that there is, in some situations, like a good story at the end of it. So the update I wanted to just give everyone are that both of my children are doing very, very well. They're both in college. My daughter, this is her senior year, and my son, this is his sophomore year. And they're doing amazing. He's been the freshman class president of his school. My daughter has started multiple clubs, has been on the honor roll all 4 years in school. So they're doing very well. Myself, I'm doing very well also. I'm currently in nursing school, so I'm pursuing my lifetime dream of becoming a nurse. And then I also have a career that I really love at this moment that is also really supporting me in my journey to become a nurse. So everything is going amazingly well. And 5 years ago, I would have never thought that this would have been the outcome after everything we had gone through.
I mean, this is amazing. I'm bowled over, truly. I'm so happy for you and your family. How is the relationship between your son and your daughter?
So unfortunately, in that aspect, my daughter does not want to have a relationship with her brother, which is understandable.
Yeah.
We've talked about it kind of early on and a little bit later, while we were in that whole process, and she's just been very, very adamant that she has no desire to communicate with him. It's As a mother, it's hard because I haven't had I have a total of 3 children. I have an older son as well. So I haven't had all 3 of my children together since that happened. So that in that aspect, it's tough.
Yeah.
But things could have been a lot tougher, or I'm sorry, a lot worse. But I'm hoping in the future, maybe when she gets older and things, she becomes a mother herself and she'll try, kind of maybe want to reach out and have a relationship with him. But my son he would love to talk to her and he wants to apologize and just kind of give his perspective on what happened, but she's just not open to it. And he understands that. So, he doesn't try to reach out. He doesn't try to push his way in at all. He's happy that she's doing well.
Well, that's totally fair, and it sounds like he's handling it as best as he can. Sort of. So, what is his status? Is he on probation, or is he totally clear of?
So he's done. So basically, what happened is he stayed in juvenile hall for quite some time. I can't even. It was all a blur. Maybe a year and a half, I think it was, and then
Yeah.
after a lot of fighting and battling for them not to send him to ultimately what was like juvenile hall prison where he would have had to stay till he was, I believe, 26. We just did a lot of battling and he was able to go to a group home. And so the group home he was sent to was really good. He stayed there, I think, a little bit over a year, and then he was released into my custody. And then he was on kind of like a little monitoring for about 2 years once he came home, and then that ended. So he doesn't have any supervision right now, and he's, like I said, he's been doing very well. But I know people probably are wondering too, like as far as his mental health status and things like that. He had to do a lot of counseling, of course, and therapy. We were trying to figure out what happened, and the only answer we could get from multiple therapists and counselors was that it just seemed like he just had a moment of blacking out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why that took place. We've asked him multiple times, like, what happened? What were you thinking? Did you do this intentionally? Like, what was it? And he just says he just doesn't remember. He remembers what he was doing right before, and then he remembers right after when I was like yelling at him, like, what happened?
Yeah.
But he doesn't remember anything in between. So he did get counseling and therapy for that. He hasn't had any other issues, thankfully. Since then, any violence or anything like that. Yeah, it's just one of those things. Like I don't know what happens, and I hope every single day, that he doesn't have one of those moments again. But he's been doing well, and then my daughter, she just never wanted to get therapy or counseling, even though
Oh, wow.
I really tried to push her to do it, but the one time I did, she kind of just sat there and in the therapy session and was just like, I don't want to talk to anyone. So after kind of talking with that therapist, they said sometimes people find another outlet. So she's very artistic. So she paints, she draws, she sews, she crochets. So I found that she does those things and that like helps her to deal with things. I still feel like she definitely should have had some type of therapy. I know that was traumatic. I myself had to get therapy and still am continuing to do that. But it was one of those things where I felt like she had been through enough and I didn't want to force her to do that. I was just allowing her to figure it out on her own. She was still doing very well in high school at that time. She was excelling. So I didn't want to throw that off course. So I just would kind of watch her and make sure nothing was changing with her. And I let her process it on her own. And it seems to have worked. I know sometimes she still has, she still kind of goes back and forth between being like a little upset with me sometimes because she knows I still communicate with her brother, which she couldn't understand that. But, I told her maybe when you become a parent, you'll understand, but it's really not for you to understand at this moment. You know what I mean? Like I have to still be a mom to both of you. So her and I, our relationships has been a little tough on that end where she just doesn't, it's hard for her to accept that. But I just do the best I can with that. There's no book, nobody to help me and tell
That's
me
for
what
sure.
to do in this case. Definitely, and I'm telling you, I searched high and low for anything that I could find
Wow.
that would be like, oh, I've experienced this, and that, it's just not out there. which is a good thing, I guess. Not a lot
Yeah.
of people are experiencing that, but at the same time, it's pretty lonely.
Oh, man. Well, it sounds like there's been a lot of healing and growth in the last 5 years. Like you said, listening to your story, it's so devastating. It's hard to believe that people could come back from that in any way.
Yeah.
So maybe you're going to be the one to write the book.
Right. I mean, yeah, I've reached out to, like, I've had other people I know that have had children in the juvenile system, and that's a lonely process in of itself. So I've reached out to people I know and just kind of been their support to give them guidance on what they should do and how to handle it, because it's very different than the adult
Yeah.
justice system. It's very different. So I've done that. I feel like I could at least pay that forward. But yeah, I thought about how I could be support to someone that maybe is going to experience what I did or has experienced it, but I haven't really figured that part out yet, that avenue yet.
I do want to talk a little bit about, your experience and being on This Is Actually Happening,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of putting your story out there for, a wide audience. What was the reaction overall you felt like you got? Was it mostly supportive, or did you have people that were negative? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I think because I'm anonymous, I think had I not been anonymous and family and friends on both sides, probably would have been a very different reaction, something I couldn't have dealt with. Like, I couldn't deal with all the, you shouldn't tell people, you should, so that's why I've chosen to stay anonymous, plus just for my children's privacy,
Mm.
because they have lives of their own. But I did at one time, I think like shortly after the episode came out, I went to the Instagram page of the podcast. I just wanted to kind of see,
Yeah.
because I don't know what people like, some people, my experience had been like they were blaming me, like I had to have known something was wrong. Other regards, people were like, oh, that, you did the best you could. So it was just back and forth. But with the comments on the podcast, they were pretty positive. And they just were, acknowledging what a tough situation I was to be in, and that I did, the best that I could. So that was good. Um, that it wasn't like, what a bad mom,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
though if you're not in this situation, you have no idea how you would handle it. So.
Right. Well, it's easy for people to throw around blame anonymously on the internet.
Oh,
And
yeah.
if I were you too, I would also, even if I was anonymous, I'd seek out, I'd want to know kind of what people were saying about it.
Mhm.
And then can you talk a little bit about what your experience was like being on the show? This Is Actually Happening.
Oh, it was a very good experience. I had actually wrote into the show just wanting to share my experience because I knew it was so kind of unique, and my therapist had actually told me that it probably would be a good idea to talk more about it,
Yeah.
like to share my story. So I was like, well, this is one way I can do it without, being too open to people knowing me personally. So I wrote into the show, and then the host wrote back to me and just was like, absolutely want to hear more about the story. So it was a good experience. It was very positive. It's very nice and understanding, not judgmental. It was a good experience because I wasn't sure what to expect, but it was, yeah, I enjoyed it. It was a very good, it helped me because I was still like in the thick of it. So it really helped
Yeah.
a lot. Yeah,
Do you still listen to the show?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I have to ask, even though I'm putting
Mhm.
myself out there, what did you think
Okay.
about what we said about your episode on Trauma Bonded?
I didn't have any problem with it. I think that you guys were very considerate and like tried to place yourself in my shoes and were very understanding to what I must have been going through, and especially when you guys were discussing like the situation with my husband at that time and how I was dealing with that and the experiences I
Yeah.
shared. Even though, you guys, it was hard for people, and not just you guys, but it's hard for people to understand why someone stays in that type of situation, especially if I had experienced it as a child. But you guys were very considerate, and non-judgmental when sharing that part of the story. So I appreciated that.
Well, we were really happy that you reached out to us. And we're really excited that you're going to be our first kind of storyteller follow-up.
Okay.
Is there, and that'll be coming out on November 7th. So we want to keep these sort of short. So I don't want us to feel like we have to add more. But is there
Okay.
anything else that you want to say, or any messages you have for any listeners? Because I know a lot of this is actually happening. Listeners will be excited to listen to your follow-up, and so this is sort of your chance if you want to say anything else.
Yeah, I think mostly what I want to say is that if anyone has experienced this or something similar, to just take it, as I say, like minute by minute. That's literally what I had to do. I just had to stay focused and do what I could do in that moment. And I just really knew that I had to be there for my kids, and that's what kept me grounded and prevented me from completely losing my sanity. So, I think the main message and why I wanted to give this update is just to provide hope for people, whether
Yeah.
you're going through something similar to this or if it's something completely opposite, but it's life changing, it's traumatic, your life is never the same after that. There is still like hope. There's still a light at the end of the tunnel. I don't know why things happen like this. I don't think I'll ever know. But it happened, and it's made me into a completely different person, but it allows me to be a much more um, caring person than what I ever was. I'm not judgmental at all, because I learned going through this how hard it is when people are judging you and they don't know your story. So that's just allowed me to change my perspective in a lot of things and just how I live my life. So really, it's just give hope to anyone that's going through anything that has shifted their life around, and just to stay strong and reach out and talk. Even if you have to do it like this anonymously, it helps to talk about it. It really, truly does. So I appreciate you guys for sharing my story again. And then I
Yeah.
appreciate you guys allowing me to provide an update. And thankfully that it's a positive update. It's really good. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I remember making the episode and us talking about what a truly remarkable mother you are to hold up both kids the way that you did when
Thank you.
this conflict happened between them. I think it's pretty amazing. And I'm glad that it seems like you're coming through it. So thank you for spending some time with me
Thank you. I
today.
appreciate that
And
so much.
I'm sending you all the peace and love I can to you and your family. Okay.
Thank you for that.
This has been a special extra episode of Trauma Bonded. If you'd like to reach out to Anonymous Mom, you can contact her at uplifting247@yahoo.com. That's uplifting247@yahoo.com. That will also be in the show notes. We are trauma bonded to the story, to the storyteller, to the listeners, and to each other. Thanks for spending time with me today. Miss you, T.